Oh, welcome back to the Ocean Studio here as part of the Yahowah blog. I'm your host, Craig Winn. We are delighted to be able to sneak this one in. We've had some turbulent weather these last, better part of a week where it's been stormy. You can see the clouds in the background, and I'm sure, no doubt, can perceive that the palm fronds are being tossed to and fro and the trade winds. It has been, blusterier than normal, and it's quite cold for us. The highs are in the low 80s and dips down into the mid 70s at night. So this is frigid weather for us here in the islands. But nonetheless, it was clear enough and calm enough for us to return. And I wanted to share this psalm. We're in the 8th of Mizmowr, or our lyrics to be sung of our King Dowd. And this begins with Yahweh's name. It begins Yahowah. And that is the proper pronunciation of the name of God as directed by his Towrah, his teaching regarding our Haya existence and even our Shalom restoration. By those words, Eloah, Towrah, Haya, and Shalom. Every letter in Yahweh's name is easily pronounced. It is Yahowah. Simple, not complicated. Certainly not something that should be controversial. The fact is that Jews and then Christians and Muslims simply erased God's name. It's well known. It's presented some 7,000 times in his Torah, prophets, and Psalms. He claims that he has but one name. I believe him. When he says, I have one name, that's the one name I want to always be known and remembered by, I think he's telling us the truth. And when he says that his name is based upon the verb Haya, then I think we should know what it means, since Haya means I was, I am, and I always will be. And when he introduced his name, he also conveyed it with my favorite of all Hebrew words, the Hebrew word that began my understanding of who Yahweh is, the very word that led me to become the first person to restore the dignity of Yahweh's name. It is Ashar. And come to find out that it's the very term, Ashra, that Yahweh would ascribe to my beloved bride, Leah. It means blessed and beneficial. So Yahweh, Edown, our upright pillar and firm foundation. Now, when we're considering this word, Edown, it is typically rendered as Adown and then as Adonai by the rabbinical type. And that is because they don't want to ever say Yahweh's name. They just want to call him my Lord. And Adown would convey the idea of Lord. And it, there are aspects of Lord that are really inappropriate, and there's aspects of the word that are appropriate. It is used throughout the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. And I have typically rendered it as Edown when directed towards Yahweh. And that is because Edown is described in the Torah as the upright pillar and the firm foundation of the tabernacle. And so he is those things. He is our upright pillar. He is the firm foundation of the tabernacle, the home of the restoring witness. And so that makes perfect sense, and that's how it is used throughout the Torah. When it is described as Adown, it can also be applied to God and to man. It was used primarily as an honorarium. So if somebody is saying, my Lord, they're speaking of either a superior in terms of overall prestige or rank or influence or position. And it's very much like if you go back to the time that I was a young man, which, depending on which life you're looking at, was anywhere between, 70 years ago and 7,000 years ago. I'm laughing here. Yeah, I'm looking pretty good for 7,000 years old. It was used like we use sir. Yes, sir. You would say of an elder that you had some respect for. Yes, sir. No, sir. And so it is used very often in that sort of way. Here it's our because it was followed not by ane, which would be my, but anaknu, which would be our or us in Hebrew. And so it's fine from that kind of an idea. It's a sign of respect. There are two Hebrew words that convey this. One is Baal, and the other is Adown or Edown, and they have a slight difference between them in that Adown only means Lord and Master. Edown only means, it's written the same exact way, by the way, upright pillar and firm foundation. And Baal would add to that husband, while they also, each of them, could address this this Lord and Master concept. So you have Adown, Lord and Master, Edown, upright pillar and firm foundation, and Baal, husband, in addition to Lord and Master. Now, there is a positive spin, as we have learned, relative to being Lord and Master as a husband, as well as Lord and Master of a domain. Dowd, when he was king of Yisrael, was the Lord and Master of Israel. That's the nature of a king. And God's form of government is going to be as a result of, as a beneficial and benevolent leader. But he is king. We're not electing. God's not going to say, I'm a big fan of democracy and we're going to hold a vote and all those who want to be leader, submit your resumes. And then we'll have debates and speeches and the people can decide. Well, the last time Israel was given the opportunity to decide, they chose Sha'uwl. And he's known for opposing the Towrah, being viscerally aggressive in trying to kill Dowd, and of being demon possessed. And his namesake would create the most egregious religion of all time, Sha'uwl, who became Paul, who God calls the plague of death. So God's not going to do that. And he is going to have a supreme and sovereign leader over his people. God does not want to himself be responsible for the nitty-gritty day-to-day management of anything. He works through people. You can hear in the background that is Kara telling Wookiee that she wants the ball that Wookiee has manned up and taken. Wookiee is trying to get Kara to recognize that there is a difference between boy dogs and girl dogs. And Kara's not buying it at this point. So Wookiee is the Edown in this situation of the ball. So the reason I'm going through this is that I think it's important that we recognize that Yahowah wants to be known as our Father and that he is Almighty God, that these are his titles, and he chooses to work through people who have different levels of authority in speaking for him, and that there are very positive as well as negative applications of Edown and Adown as well as Baal. But the biggest issue with Baal is that it was misappropriated, as was Adown, Lord. Both of them were misappropriated by the adversary, as he does. He also misappropriated Ashar, becoming Asherah, the mother of God, the queen of heaven, and virtually every religion, including Christianity. And it's prevalent also within Islam. So these are she definitely has an opinion as to what is important to her. And so these are things to understand that Satan misappropriates the things that God cherishes and that he uses as symbols. You look at the fact that he has designated the role I'm playing as being a bull, and yet you look at the bull and it's a preeminent source of worship, if you will, a false god in so many pagan religions. So something misappropriated from God, as was Ashar, as is Baal. And the case with Baal, when Elijah opposed the religious and political establishment of Israel, his enemy was not Baal and it wasn't Asherah. It was the religious pontificators on their behalf who were preaching on behalf of a false god and false religion. So just something to keep in mind as we come across Edown. We're always learning and we have to refine our understanding. So this is Yahowah, Edown, our upright pillar and our firm foundation. And then he asks a question, Ma. Ma is an interrogative in Hebrew, and it's considered a interrogative pronoun. And it encourages us to ponder the implications behind the who, what, why, where, when, and how characteristics associated with the persona or designation of God in this case and his people. So who is awesomely magnificent, Adyr, powerful and majestic, superior. How superior, how magnificent, in what ways is your name? So we've been told Yahowah is God's name, that he is the foundation and the upright pillar of our lives, and that according to his beloved son, his name is Adyr, awesomely magnificent, powerful and majestic, superior and splendid, stately and sovereign, noble and beautiful, desirable and grand, suitable and powerful, recognizable and deserving our respect. So, why did rabbis erase it? Why won't they say it? Why doesn't it appear in their Talmud or in their Zohar? If the New Testament is from God, which it isn't, why isn't God's glorious name appear anywhere in it? If you don't know the answers to those questions, then you're a really lost soul. You are one of those beguiled by religion. And he says, he concludes this in the entirety of the material realm and in the land. So we're being told by Dowd, who wrote this psalm, that Yahowah, our upright pillar, the firm foundation, that he is saying in so many ways, the how, the where, the where, the why, the when, the what of your name is awesomely magnificent. Everything that we could ponder regarding your name, Yahowah, is desirable, beautiful, noble, deserving of respect, and is easily recognizable. And that is true in the entirety of the material realm. Mizmowr lyrics to sing Psalm 8:9. So this is not only the first step towards knowing who we are and why we are here, where we are going and how we're going to get from here to there. It is the only responsible, rational, and respectful approach to God. If you do not know his name, if you do not use his name, if you do not celebrate his Shem, then I can tell you for certain, you do not know him and he does not know you. If you are using another name for your God, you are being disrespectful. You're being annoying to the one true God, and you're wasting your soul. So thanks to Dowd, we continue to learn and grow in our relationship with Yahowah. to the enduring guide and everlasting director, based upon the Githyth, the winepress. There is a Mizmowr, melody and lyrics by Dowd the Beloved. So what I'm doing now is, for your edification, I'm going to go through the entirety of the 8th Mishal as a review, because we started it probably some weeks ago. And it is from Dowd, who is the beloved. It is about the winepress. Now, the winepress is not just something that he thought he would throw in and say, well, you know, that's symbolic of something or other. And in his case, we know that before he wrote this Mizmowr, he had a problem with a little too much wine. That's what got him into trouble. But it's the winepress that also resolved that problem. There is a man known to Dowd that emerged from the winepress earlier in his life, in fact, at the transition point in his life, and that will come again, emerge from that winepress to restore his people unto him. The winepress, in this case, speaks of Obed-Edowm. Obed-Edowm is the man who, when a individual tried to impose his influence over the movement and direction of the Ark of the Covenant, as it was being moved into Jerusalem for the first time, to set on the Temple Mount, now that Dowd had acquired it, and he had built the city of Dowd out of Jerusalem, that it was being pulled by a bull, because it's a bull, the symbolism of a bull, that's going to restore the Ark of the Covenant in its proper place prior to Dowd's return and anointing it on Yom Kippurim. And that was interrupted. And Dowd had a Tizzy fit. He began what was a very sad episode in his life, where he felt that it was appropriate for him to lash out at God, to be angry at God. And he didn't like the fact that God killed the man who tried to interrupt the process of bringing the Ark of the Covenant into its proper place. And so Dowd just gave up and said, okay, I don't understand how we're going to get it from here to there, so we're just going to leave it where it is, and you can figure it out, God, because I don't appreciate you killing this man. And God says, all right, there we go. I'll have the Ark protected by Obed-Edowm, the man from the winepress. And he will reveal all of the blessings of that Ark. He will keep it in his home. And then when it's time, he will make certain that it's properly moved to its correct position under the tent of the restoring witness on the Temple Mount. Just as Obed-Edom, as the man from Edom, the man from this winepress, will do the same thing according to Yahowah, Isaiah, as he presents the man from Edom through whom many are saved, in the 63rd chapter of Yahowah. And so this is what Dowd is speaking of at this point, of how Obed-Edom will become the man from Edom, and that many will be saved as a result of the one who comes out of the winepress. Yahowah, Edown, our upright pillar, our firm foundation. How awesomely magnificent, superior and sovereign, desirable and recognizable, Adyr, is your name. So if you think I'm starting at the end, since that's the passage I just read, understand that the first and the 8th statement of the 8th Mizmowr or psalm, it begins and ends the same way. It's Dowd's way, perhaps, of saying just as Obed-Edowm resolved the issue of the Ark of the Covenant and made certain that it was brought into Jerusalem and placed under the tent of the restoring witness at the proper time and the proper way, by the way, on Taruwah, so shall he reposition the Ark of the Covenant in a way that saves many. On Taruwah, 3,000 years later, we're going to come full circle. So just as he is announcing that the firm foundation that Yahowah provides reveals that his name is awesomely magnificent, sovereign, desirable, that it is recognizable and it should earn our respect. And that's how he begins, that's how he ends. It's a wonderful bookend for one's life, is it not? Throughout the land and the material realm, which to show the way to the benefits of the relationship, you and I have chosen to bestow your glory. Beyond all of the spiritual realm, Mizmowr 8:1. You see, Dowd is Yahweh's representative on earth. He is called Elyon in the 89th Mizmowr, Dowd's song. And as Elyon, he is God's influence and representative on earth. And it is Dowd who, by fulfilling Pisak Matz and Makudim, became the one who showed the way to the benefits of the relationship, Ashar. And as a result, Dowd is acknowledging that you and I have chosen to bestow your glory. Nathan, Hod, Ata, written in both the cohortative, first person expression of volition, and the imperative, second person, so that they are of like mind. This is what they both want. And this is a marvelous recovery from what Dowd was headed to at this point and ultimately recovered. So you and I have chosen now to bestow your glory beyond the spiritual realm, so that it's known here on the earth. Mizmowr 8:1. Out of the mouths and oral expressions of children and infants, you have laid a foundation of power and strength which can withstand anything. I laugh because, I am either 7,000 years old or 70 years old, depending on which iteration of my life you want to focus on. The fact is that Yahowah refers to me as young man. When we have a chat, I'm always, okay, young man. And so what he's officially saying is that he's father and we are all his children. And that it's amazing what the children of God can accomplish. And that through his children, Yahowah has laid a foundation that is empowering, that is strengthening, it's emboldening, that can withstand anything, Oz. It is why one of the two support columns for the temple, the one on the left or the north side, suggesting that it would be representing Goyim, where the one on the right side, Yakin, represents the Yehudim, and Dowd being on the southern side of a temple facing east. And the one on the north side, the left-hand side, is Baos. Sometimes it's pronounced as Boaz, but Oz and Oz, it's the same verb in Hebrew. It means to empower and to strengthen. Ba means with. This name is introduced as Ruth's husband. He is the Baal of Ruth, who is the ultimate shepherdess, who announces to him that she's symbolic of the Amma, this productive mother. And she says, I am your productive mother, and I will deliver to you the Gaal, the kinsman redeemer, Dowd. And so all of this blends together to have an understanding of how the foundation of power and strength, which can withstand anything, Oz is also conveyed in Boaz and related to the story of Ruth and the very husband of the Amma, who we later learn is also Leah. It makes this prophetic, and it conveys all of those insights because it is Yahweh's intent to lay a foundation of power and strength which can withstand anything through his deployment of this man known as Boaz, known also as Ethan Ha-Ezraki, something we will discover and explore in great detail later on. And this is the man that has the most influence on restoring Dowd's relationship with Yahowah. So this is an order to put a stop to the adversary who is trying to control, constrain, and diminish you in this hostile force which brings trouble by being antagonistic to you, as well as to hold the guilty accountable by punishing the perpetrator. 8:2. Dowd would fight many demons. He began life by fighting the chosen king of Israel, Sha'uwl, who tried to kill him. He would then fight many of Israel's adversaries, fighting defensive battles to protect his people. But the greatest demon that Dowd had to confront was himself. He lost his way. He fell precipitously. And it's well known what he did and the various mistakes he made along the way. And for most people who are not thoughtful in their understanding of the Hebrew text, they would say that Dowd disqualified himself as the Son of God, as the Messiah, as the returning King, and certainly as our Savior and as the sacrificial lamb of Passover. But that's only because they would render the Hebrew words like Tamym incorrectly as perfect, as opposed to correctly as completing the job, getting it done, having the tenacity to take the mission all the way to the finish line, fulfilling your responsibility. And under those bases, then Dowd was accountable. And so this is a realization that, there were all sorts of adversarial things swirling in and around Dowd that had to be controlled, they had to be diminished, they had to be constrained, and that this man named and considered Oz, whether it's Boaz or simply the fact that the bull is powerful and strong. That's how Dowd's demons were resolved. Then he says, truly, when I look at your heavens, the universe and the spiritual realm, and the accomplishments of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which to reveal the benefits of the relationship you have fashioned and formed, what is Enosh, mortal man by comparison? Well, the fact is that Dowd by this time had become aware that there were two luminaries, both great from God's perspective, and that they would shine most brightly in fulfilling and announcing the fulfillment of the Mowedym. They were signs of the Mowedym, which are the restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony. They began in the spring with Pesach, Matzah, and Bakorim, which were fulfilled by this man, Dowd. and year 4000 Yah in 33 CE, just as the fourth day of creation details. And that his achievements, his accolades, his very reputation would be reflected and restored by the moon, the lesser luminary, during the time of darkness. And so he's saying, so what is and who is this mortal man? And so again, it's prophetic. It's a teaching moment. It brings all of these insights together so that we realize that the stars are speak of the luminaries, and the moon is the one that reflected Dowd's light and the one who resolved his problem at this time. And it says, you are mindful of him and the very Son of Man, that surely you take stock of him and relate to him. 8:4. And this is something that I have been studying here in the evenings after the show. Yes, you know, I only work a 90-hour a week, and that means I'm only working half time, because that means I'm working 13 hours a day as a 90-hour work week. And so that means I'm working half time. It's a half-time job. But the other half time, besides sleeping and eating, I'm studying a variety of subjects that I find interesting. And one of them has to do with the unique nature of our planet and who we are on it. And when I returned to the conditions, the story of Eden, the Garden of Eden, and learned that it was Yahowah who caused the fall of man, and learned why he had done so, and where man had failed in the garden, and then came to appreciate that we're being taken back to the garden. And just like the psalm comes full circle, we're coming full circle. We were given the opportunity to excel in the garden and failed. And we're being brought back to the garden after 6,000 years of being outside of it to be given the chance to succeed. And there are three things essentially that God wants: us to be observant, to us to be responsive, and us to be reliable. And this is how God would take stock of man. This is what he is expecting from man. So as I looked at the garden, Gan means protective and enclosed environment that's suitable for life. And when Yahweh was returning the entire earth to the conditions of Gan, I began to perceive the earth as a sheltered and enclosed garden, conducive to life, that was protected. And in that regard, I was besieged immediately thereafter as I surveyed YouTube, which is kind of my way of winding down at the end of the day. All of these programs that were on how uniquely tuned the earth is for life. Some of them would say, by comparison to the earth, Mars, for example, and the moon are both hideously toxic. Humankind can't live in either place for any length of time. And they went through the uniquenesses of Earth. And they would do 2 and 3 hours on all of the things that had to be perfectly positioned, sized, and everything for life to exist on this planet. And then they go through the exceeding unlikelihood of intelligent life. And then they'll go and they'll analyze the universe and say that when you consider how many unique things have to be right for a planet to be conducive to life, it is almost certain that there is no life on any other planet. And we realize just how unique this place is, that it is a place conducive to life. And that's what we're given this final opportunity to get our act together so that Yahowah can take us off of this planet and explore the rest of the universe, where we're likely to conceive life with him in new places. So when you think of it that way, what you come to realize is what Dowd is saying here, that man really is in the center of the universe. as is this planet. In fact, the universe is equally distant all around us. We are in the center of the universe. We are the one place where life was conceived, where it thrives. We're in the one place where we're being given a second chance to demonstrate to our Creator that we can be trusted by Him, that we're interesting, that we're good explorers, that we're observant, that we're responsive, and that we're reliable. That's why this says Zakrahu. And Zakrahu doesn't just mean that you are mindful of Him. It means in particular that you remember, you celebrate the most memorable of men. You celebrate the very Son of Man, such that you take stock in Him. You relate to Him. When you understand God's whole story from beginning to end, that is a very powerful, very profound thought. Therefore, you have made Him somewhat diminished, withholding something from God. And yet, you have surrounded and enveloped Him with honor and respect, and with an abundance of riches, with a powerful presence and a glorious reward, along with the most appealing attributes, valuable qualities, and useful attitudes. 8:5. Do you know what he means by all of this? I do. God is 7-dimensional. The universe He conceived is 6 dimensions. Our planet and the realm that we understand is 3.5 dimensions. We have up, down, right, left, back and forth. And we can maneuver in those 3 dimensions in the ordinary flow of time. The 4th dimension. 3.5 dimensions is what we're in. God is 7-dimensional. So we have been created as a diminished version of Yahowah. And God's not going to enhance us, empower us, enable us, and increase our dimensionality from 3.5 to 4, 5, 6, and 7 until He knows that He can trust us. And He can't trust us until there are enough of us who relate to Him, who are observant, who closely examine and carefully consider the information He has provided for us to understand, who then respond to Him and contribute to the relationship. And when they make a mistake, they learn from it and grow as a result. When they trip and fall, they get back up and get going, therefore demonstrating that they are dependable. And it's only then that God's going to say, I can trust you enough to empower you up to 7 dimensions, so we will not have a diminished difference between me and you. So we can relate directly to God in a far more exciting and empowered way. But you see, with every increase in dimensions, there is an infinite increase in choices and of opportunities. And we just can't be trusted currently with following God's instructions regarding how to capitalize upon and do no harm in, and yet enjoy being elevated past our current 3-dimensional realm. And our brains don't process typically things that are infinite. In fact, we can't. But I just want you to have some appreciation for the fact that with each increase in dimensionality, for example, in time, time exists as a photon of light, and therefore all time can exist simultaneously. You can witness the past, you can witness the future, and you can travel throughout this universe great distances in no time. So it's a marvelous kind of thing. And light energy is E equals mc squared. It's the square of the speed of light times matter that is equivalent to energy. So we're being empowered. God is enabling us, enriching us, so that we're more like him through this process. So we are going to be surrounded ultimately by honor and respect, with an abundance of riches, with a powerful presence, a glorious reward when our physical bodies are transformed and the carrier of our soul becomes radiant energy and light as opposed to this physical being. And the combination of our soul that has unique attributes and qualities and attitudes, and our nasama that is the carrier of our rational thought, that all of this gives humanity this most appealing possibility of valuable qualities and useful attitudes and aptitudes. Pretty heady stuff so far, isn't it? This is revelation for graduate school level, if you will. So you have provided him, speaking of humankind, with proverbs, with mashal, and allowed him to exercise his free will, sharing these memorable messages, particularly about leadership. I pause here because I have discovered over these past few days who actually wrote the mashal, what their purpose is, what they're about, but actually who authored them. And so this message now rings far more powerfully, particularly as it comes from Dowd. Because in the other studio, we're examining Dowd's lowest possible moment. And we know that he recovered from that. We know from the final word picture, the final mashal, that he had a visit from the Amma, the productive mother, who is Ashar, the most beneficial and blessed of all women. And that he sobered up as a result of that, but that there was another visit. And the evidence of that visit turns out to be the most glorious of all songs, the 89th Mizmowr. And that's what was delivered to Dowd by the one who is credited for writing 30 of the 31 mashal. And so by Dowd conveying all of these very profound thoughts about who we are, who Yahowah is, and how we bridge the gap between them, between he and us, the person who provided the memorable messages, the proverbs that allowed him to express himself this way and lead in this manner, is the very person who co-authored the 89th Mizmowr with Yahowah and delivered it to Dowd. So in these words, if I had read this a week ago, I wouldn't have seen that. Reading it now, I know. And we'll get to a point where you're going to know what I know as we continue to progress with all of this. And so this means you have provided him with proverbs and allowed him to exercise his free will, by sharing these memorable messages with him, by revealing the mashal to him, all accompanied by the accomplishments of your hands. In other words, it was the hand of God that provided the mashal to Dowd to teach him what he had missed, so that he could become the man we know him to be. And it says, you have placed everything under his feet, so that he might stand. His stance might be righteous. Mizmowr 8:6. You read these things and you realize just how far we have come. I'm sharing this with you as the first volume of Coming Home. Here it is in its new look, and in this, you can see I'm going through the Mizmowr and sharing them with you. The 10th chapter of Volume 1 is where I present the 89th Mizmowr, Dowd's song, for the first time. And I have recapped every other time that I've referenced it throughout the Yahowah series, which is very frequently. And my friends, we're going to return to it, particularly after we come to know who co-authored it with Yahowah and what the purpose of it actually is. But as I shared it here, I didn't know 6 years ago when I wrote this for the first time. 6 years ago, I didn't know 1% of what I know now. And 6 years ago, when I wrote the first volume of Coming Home, I had already invested 18 years of 12 to 14 hour days, 6 to 7 days a week, and translating Yahweh's testimony and coming to know him. But we have become the result of what God wants most of all from us, to be observant. The more we observe his message and contemplate what he has shared with us, the more we know. The more we know and make connections, thoughtful, rational deductions, the more we understand. And knowledge and understanding are foundational in the sense that when you have a little, you can make the next step, but it's going to be a baby step. We know enough in kindergarten to to wash our hands before snack. We don't know a lot. First grade, we're beginning to learn an alphabet and maybe some simple math, but we're not ready for algebra and trigonometry and geometry or calculus or any of those kinds of things. The history might be what mom and dad did yesterday, as opposed to what happened 3,000 years ago and how it influences our lives. The more we learn, the better we're positioned to understand, although I think it's less than a tiny fraction of 1% of people who become scholars and know a lot that actually transition to the full benefit, which is understanding. And the more you understand, the more you're capable of understanding. So the floodgates really open after a while, and that's where we are. I was chatting with Rich and Leah just before this program, and Leah is championing the idea of a early harvest of us leaving in 100 days on the 22nd of May, 2026 of this year. And I said to her that then I can't finish the job, because at this point I need to conclude the book I'm presently writing and share that with you as part of the Yahowah blog. And it's profoundly important. We're well into it at this point, and within weeks we'll probably reach that result. But then it's, I think, vital that we complete the portions of Yeshaya, Isaiah, that we have not dealt with yet. There's probably 10 chapters. So that's a volume in itself. And then there's a lot that we have not yet analyzed in what's considered to be the minor prophets. There's more of Zephaniah. There's more of Yoel. There's more of Zechariah. all to be deduced and shared, which is every bit of a volume. And, the resulting Yahowah vlogs that would be derived from it. And then now that we have learned more about the origin and the purpose and the timing of the Mashal and how they overlapped the last 4 years of Dowd's life and the first 4 years of Solomon's reign as king, and therefore Solomon from the time that he would have been 8 years old to the time he was 12. That this, well, actually, from the time that he was 16, first 4 years of his reign, and the last 4 years of Dowd's first of 3 lives. So 8 to 16 on Solomon. So now that I've come to understand that, I want to share everything that can be deduced from the Mizmowr. I've done, but with limited understanding. I know 6, 7, 14, and 31. But snippets from others, but there's a lot there. We want to share that. And it would be at least 3 volumes. So can I write 5 or 6 volumes over the course of a little more than a year? Probably not. But I can get a lot closer. Feel a lot more comfortable having completed the job. So I'm hoping for a later withdrawal. Well, I think my wife would be happy if we left within the next 100 days. And one of the things I have shared with both Rich and Leah, and I'm going to share with you now, I think that the only way for the earlier harvest to occur is for one of 2 things to happen, and it has to happen really within the next month. One is that either Israel or the United States, or collectively both Israel and the United States, attack Iran again. The result is going to be quite different than the last time, if that occurs. Israel is going to get pummeled. The United States is going to face a catastrophic loss as well if the United States engages. And Israel and the United States are both going to look for a way to sue for peace. And with the united Islamic world, the only thing that they would accept is a Islamic state carved out of the heart of Israel that makes Israel's ongoing existence impossible. And therefore, the state of terror that thins Israel at the waist would transpire within weeks or months of that attack, and therefore put everything in place for an early withdrawal. The second is that Trump, who has destroyed the reserve currency status of the US dollar by weaponizing the dollar, and who has infuriated the entire world, showing that the United States is a belligerent bully who cannot be trusted, has empowered the BRICS nations, particularly China, but also Russia, India, and Brazil, to the point that they have gone full speed ahead at creating a competitor to the dollar in international trade. And it's gained so much steam that the dollar has gone from about 99% of all international trade down to below 60% just recently. And the U.S. debt can no longer be funded. The only way to create the illusion of solvency is by printing boatloads of money through quantitative easing, destroying the value of the currency and making it even less desirable for anyone to actually buy a bond. That being the case, if over the next month Trump does something again that causes those nations to say, let's stop kidding around, let's stop the slow pace of divesting from treasuries, U.S. treasuries, and pulling away from the U.S. economy. And that's happening at a very fast rate now in Canada and in Europe and in Japan and Australia. Almost all of America's allies are pulling away from the United States and from U.S. Trade ties. Now, that comes to a crisis. We can't fund our debt. At that point, Saudi Arabia is going to want to make a deal. They've already started to sell vast amounts of oil and currencies other than the dollar. Their largest customer is China, and they sell oil to China in the yuan. And they do business with Russia in their dollars and each of their currencies. But the only way to prolong, even for a brief time, the illusion of U.S. solvency through the reserve currency, which is the only way that the U.S. has been able to create these massive deficits without appearing bankrupt, is for Saudi Arabia to play along a bit longer. And if Saudi Arabia plays along a bit longer, they're going to be quite demanding. The last time they demanded that the U.S. defend Saudi Arabia against all foes under all circumstances with the U.S. military, that we give them access to our most advanced AI chips and artificial intelligence, that we provide them with nuclear power and nuclear technology, and that we give them hundreds of billions of dollars of our most advanced weaponry. But they're not going any further until we give them Israel. And Trump is now in a position to give them Israel on a platter. And if those things happen, then we're also in place for an earlier harvest. So either one of those two, you can watch what happens over the next 60 to 90 days and know whether or not it's May 22nd of this year or the 11th of June of next year. All right, I want to share that with you because I know a lot of people are interested in the timing. So this goes on to say, flocks of sheep and thousands of yes, an intelligent bull. Aleph speaks of intelligence. It is the Hebrew word for 1,000. It is the Hebrew word for bull. It is the Hebrew word for intelligent. Shoneh is the Hebrew word for sheep, for a flock of sheep. So there will be sheep, and there will be a learned bull, and they will work together along with the wild animals that are in the open realm, the beasts, if you will. The birds of the sky, the fish of the sea. Fish of the sea is really correctly translated that it is that which creates enrichment and empowerment from the sea. And the Shipur would be that which flies. So this is the lambs and the most intelligent of bulls. Both of them, all of them, along with the various living beings from the open environs. That which can fly and that which is empowering and enriching from the sea are all extended by way of the sea, by way of a goyim. Mizmowr 8:8. Yes, indeed, that's quite insightful. God's going to make all of this happen through his lamb on Passover, through the bull on Taruwah, and there will be many living beneficiaries who will be brought from the opens environs, and that as a result, some will fly and others will be dramatically increased, all as a result of what Yahowah has extended from the sea. And Abar also means by way of Passover and by reaching out and taking us to the other side. So that was 8:8. Yahowah, Edown, our upright pillar and firm foundation. How awesomely magnificent, beautiful, and desirable, recognizable, and deserving of respect is your name in the entirety of the material realm and of the land. Mizmowr 8:9. Beautiful, isn't it? Tells us exactly what we need to know. And so with that, I'm thinking maybe it's best that we postponed the next Mizmowr, which is beautiful. It's the 9th. It will be the final Mizmowr in the last chapter of this volume. And we'll save it to our next program here from our ocean studio. We have survived. We haven't been rained on. We haven't been blown out. It's getting a little bit more stormy out there. So I'm just so delighted we were able to get this program in. And we'll return to this and cover the Mizmowr 9 in our next episode here from the ocean studio. Later today, we're going to return to really the depths of hell, to the most horrid moment of our king's existence, so that we have an appreciation of how far he rose after he had fallen. And we'll do that late this afternoon. So thank you for listening. It was a joy to be here with you as part of this program. Good day.